Hello the internet, my name is Dain and this is Filmmaking 101. Welcome back to Filmarmy's Filmmaking 101. In our past episodes we talked about getting an idea, and then we've talked about getting the structure of the idea and the story, and now we're going to be talking about what a lot of people are excited for, script writing. But before we get into the really exciting part of script writing, we're going to have to talk about sort of the fundamentals and the format of writing a script. Screenplays are very, very format heavy. So much so that if you don't have the proper screenplay format, that most people won't even read it. Agents and readers get so many scripts per day that they're just looking for excuses to throw them away, and if your script doesn't follow proper screenplay format, then that's usually the best excuse not to read it. So that's what I'm here for, to teach you the proper format and what all the elements are used for. We're going to get right into this, guys. So here is a sample script I wrote. We're going to jump right into it today, guys. So here is a sample script that I wrote. It's nothing fancy, but it's got all the different elements that you could use. Right at the very top here is what we call the scene heading, or a slug line. Its purpose is to tell you whether it's inside or outside, which is INT or EXT for interior or exterior. The physical location the scene is taking place, so it could be John's house, Mary's bedroom, the kitchen, and then the time of day. It usually is only day or night. Unless it's absolutely necessary to specify whether it's dusk or dawn, I would stick to day or night. The next segment of the script is called the action. This here is used for description of the location or what the characters are doing, pretty much anything that isn't dialogue. Every time a new character is introduced, their names are in capitals. It is only the first time that character is introduced that his name is all in capitals. Anything else after that just looks kind of amateur and sloppy. In this example I didn't put a description in, but it's usually when you introduce a character, you give a brief physical description and an age range. Also, make sure your action is written in the present tense. Screenplays are happening now, not in the past. Even if it's a flashback, it's still happening now. Also, action should be reserved for only what you see and what you hear. Do not go into your character's inner monologue, don't go into your character's emotional state. You should be able to imply what your character's emotional states are through what they're doing and what they're saying. If you need to tell the reader and the audience that they are scared, then your writing needs a little bit of work. Next up is dialogue. It always starts centered in the page with the character's name in all caps and then the dialogue to follow underneath. Now you see, this time when Gordon is speaking, there is an extension, and that is usually in brackets beside the character's name, which is VO, which stands for voiceover, OS for off-screen. This is used to indicate how the dialogue is read on camera. So obviously, when it's voiceover, the character on screen isn't actually talking, but instead is dubbed over later on in time in the post-production process. Now, the next dialogue has something that a lot of new writers struggle with. It's the parentheses. A lot of new writers use this to indicate the emotional state or the way the line should be delivered. So something like nervously or shouting. Parentheses are used to direct the dialogue in terms of quality of speech and not the emotional state in which the line is said. For example, whether it's over the phone or who the line is being directed to, if it's unclear, if there's a lot of characters talking to each other, sometimes I like to use to himself or to this character, and that way it's just a little easier to read and you understand what's going on. It is the director and the actor's job to figure out how the line should be read emotionally. And when you start interjecting emotions into your dialogue, that's when you start stepping on the toes of the director and the actor, and you take away some of the movie magic, because the way that an actor or director interprets the script is really sort of when it comes to life. So if you take that liberty away from them, you're also draining a little bit of life away from the script and the story. Next we have something called the transition. This is usually a cut to, smash to, fade to black, dissolve to. Generally, if you're writing a spec script or a first draft, you don't include transitions. It's just not a thing that's really necessary unless it lends itself to the story. For example, dissolve is usually used to show the passage of time, or sort of a flashback sequence. Sometimes the cut lends itself to the joke or the storytelling. For example, if the joke is a character saying, "Oh, I'm not going to go to this, I swear to God, there's no way I'm going to go to Jeff's party," it's kind of effective to do smash cut, Jeff's party. But other than that, I would leave all the dissolves or cut tos completely out of the script unless they're absolutely necessary to get the point of the story or the joke. Writing screenplays is a little different than writing a narrative story or short story or prose or anything like that. Remember, movies are an audio and visual medium, which means that we see things and we hear things, sometimes together, sometimes independently, and that's the way we tell our stories. So remembering that, we have to write in shots and sounds, so that when the script gets produced, whether we're directing it or whether we're just writing it, It needs to be interpreted faithfully to what we see as writers in our mind's eye. What that means is writing in visual shots. It's not just rattling off what happens in a scene. It's not Joe walks to the door, Joe turns the door handle, Joe opens the door. That's not interesting. The screenplay should be as exciting and interesting to read as the movie is to watch. So you want to embellish the action parts of your script with literary shots. And by that I mean, so the door opening. You'd want to say, Joe slowly approaches the door. His hand shakes as he reaches for the doorknob. That there, to me as a director, implies that I need to do an insert on the doorknob, a close-up, as the hand reaches forward and he takes it. That way we see the hand shaking, we see the doorknob, and that there is a literary visual shot. The way I'm writing informs the director's shots. One of the big mistakes that a lot of amateur screenwriters make is they use the phrase, "we open on," or "we see." That is not storytelling, that's lazy and bad writing. For example, in Jurassic Park, we're not going to say, "we see a jungle filled with dinosaurs." It's a beautiful, lush jungle filled with dinosaurs. It's the exact same thing. We just remove sort of the amateur, sort of grandiose bullshit. Those are the basics of screenwriting. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Screenwriting follows a very, very, very specific format. Like to the point of, if things aren't the exact measurement from the margins, people won't even read it. Thankfully, this isn't the 40s or the 50s where people were doing this by hand on a typewriter. We now have some programs that help you out. The industry standard program is Final Draft. That's what most people use to write scripts. It does all the formatting for you, and it has a bunch of great little storytelling and production tools. However, there is a free program called Celtx, which does pretty much everything Final Draft does, and it's completely free for both Windows and Mac. So if you are interested in screenwriting, I highly recommend you pick up this program. If you don't already have it, it's great, it's free, and it does everything you could ever want in a screenwriting program. If you are serious about screenwriting and you really want to learn more about it, I cannot recommend enough Sid Field's Screenplay. It is, a lot of people consider it the be-all and end-all Bible of screenwriting for movies and films, and I would agree. It is one of the best books I've ever read for scriptwriting and screenwriting, and I've read a bunch of them. And this is a book I go back to time and time again. I read it once a year just to refresh my mind. There are also a bunch of great online resources for screenwriters, especially if you're new or have a question on how one thing is formatted or how to write something. The one I used when I started writing is Screenplay.info. It is unreal the amount of content and information that is in there in terms of screenplay, in terms of formatting, and examples, and just anything that you could possibly need when it comes to screenwriting. That site probably has it. You've been getting off pretty easy so far, but today I'm going to be assigning you some homework. I want you to go read the script of your favorite movie. You can usually Google it and find it. The best advice I ever got when I started writing was the only way you could ever be a good screenwriter is if you read a bunch of screenplays. So read as many scripts as you can. Start with the movies you like, start with the movies you know, and that way you can just sort of see how this brilliant writing gets turned into these brilliant movies. Hopefully you've got the spark. In the first episode, you turned that spark into a full-formed idea in the second, and now we're going to start scripting it out. And in the next episode, I will be telling you why everything you just wrote is not good. My name is Dain, and this has been Filmarmy's Filmmaking 101. We'll see you next time.